Your porch isn't made of wood anymore. That rippling, purple-black texture stretching from your front door to the stairs just moved, and if your bare skin brushes against it, the structural integrity of your physical frame will fail before you can even reach for the handle. What looks like a decorative rug in the moonlight is actually a predatory shadow, a biological carpet that has decided the ocean is no longer enough to satisfy its hunger. The tropical heat of Southeast Asia usually brings the sound of cicadas and the distant rhythm of the tide, but tonight, the islands are unnervingly silent. Along the coastlines of Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines, a transformation is occurring that defies every known rule of marine biology. The Crown-of-thorns starfish, once a slow-moving resident of the coral reefs, has discarded its need for the sea. These entities have evolved, developing a specialized respiratory system that pulls oxygen from the humid night air, allowing them to drag their venomous weight onto the white sands and into the very homes of the people who live there. They do not move like animals. They move like a slow, inevitable tide of ink. A single crown of thorns is a nightmare of radiating spines and defensive mechanisms. But when thousands of them link together, they form the shadow carpets. They drape themselves over boardwalks, cover the floors of beachside villas, and coat the stairs of jungle lodges. To the untrained eye in the dim light of a power outage, they look like nothing more than a plush, dark floor covering. But this carpet has a heartbeat, and it is waiting for the weight of a footfall to trigger a chemical reaction for which there is no known remedy. The danger isn't in a bite or a sting in the traditional sense. It is the sophisticated delivery of a specialized compound that doesn't target the nerves, but the very minerals that keep a human being upright. When the spines penetrate the skin, they inject a compound that mimics the body's natural process for recycling structural matter, but it accelerates it by 1,000-fold. Within minutes, the rigid support of the leg or the spine becomes as flexible as silk. There is no sudden agony, only a terrifying realization that your limbs can no longer hold your weight. You don't fall because you tripped. You fall because the architecture of your body has turned to a fluid state. Once the target is down, the shadow carpet begins to move in earnest. The individual starfish, previously still, begin to overlap. They slide over one another with a dry, clicking sound, a sound like thousands of fingernails tapping on glass. They don't just consume, they envelop. They wrap around the fallen, creating a living casing of thorns that slowly pulls the remains toward the dark spaces under the floorboards or back toward the receding tide. By sunrise, there is nothing left but a faint, glistening trail on the wood and an empty room that looks exactly as it did the night before. Travelers arriving at remote island resorts have begun to report strange observations. They speak of moving shadows in their rooms that seem to vanish when the light is turned on. They mention the way the local staff refuses to walk on the ground after sunset without heavy rubber boots, even in the sweltering heat. There are stories of entire coastal villages that have been found completely abandoned, with every door left wide open and every floor covered in a strange purple residue that smells of salt and old copper. No struggle, no signs of forced entry, just a silence that feels heavy and weighted. The biology behind this shift remains a mystery that many are hesitant to investigate. Some suggest that the warming oceans and the acidification of the reefs forced the species to find a new habitat, while others whisper about a more deliberate adaptation. If the reef is dying, the predator must find a new forest to hunt in. The humid jungles and the moisture-rich air of the islands provide the perfect bridge between the water and the land. They have found that the structures built by humans, the wooden decks, the tile floors, the paved paths, are perfect hunting grounds because they are flat, predictable, and frequented by prey that has forgotten how to look down. The visual of an infestation is something that stays with the few witnesses who have escaped. Looking out a window at midnight and seeing a garden path beginning to ripple. The moonlight catches the tips of 10,000 spines, making the entire ground look like it's made of shivering glass. The house itself begins to change shape as the shadow carpets climb the walls, sealing the windows and doors with a thick, pulsating layer of thorns. It is a slow-motion siege where the weapons are patience and a chemical that erases the ability to run away. In the coastal towns of the Andaman Sea, the locals have stopped calling them starfish. They refer to them as the grip of the deep. They have learned that if you hear a soft, wet, sliding sound coming from under your bed, you do not put your feet on the floor. You stay in the center of the mattress and pray that the sun rises before the carpet reaches the edges. They know that the shadow carpets are sensitive to vibrations, and any attempt to jump or scramble only draws the collective closer, faster. There is a documented case of a luxury eco-resort that went dark for 3 days. When the supply boat finally arrived, they found the entire main hall covered in a layer of Crown-of-thorns so thick that the floor was a foot higher than it should have been. The organisms were stacked on top of each other, a pulsating mass of purple and black. When the crew shone their high-intensity flashlights on the mass, the creatures didn't retreat. They simply shivered, their spines clicking in a rhythmic, terrifying unison. The people who had been staying there were never found, but the boat crew noted that the furniture remained perfectly in place, untouched, as if the guests had simply integrated into the floor. Scientists who have attempted to study the land-roving Crown-of-thorns have found that their intelligence is communal. A single starfish is a simple organism, but a carpet of 1,000 functions like a neural network. They can sense heat signatures from several yards away and can coordinate their movements to cut off exits. They don't just wander, they colonize. They identify the paths of least resistance and the areas of highest traffic, laying themselves out like a trap that has been set for millions of years. The most disturbing aspect of the shadow carpets is their silence. There is no growl, no roar, no warning. There is only the subtle shift of the floor, covering, and the sudden soft collapse of the person standing on it. The compound acts as a local anesthetic, so the victim often doesn't even realize they've been punctured until they try to take a step and find that their ankle has the consistency of wet clay. By then, the carpet has already begun to fold its edges inward, securing the catch with a grip that cannot be broken by hands that are also losing their shape. As the sun sets over the Gulf of Thailand, the residents of the stilt houses now keep their lights burning bright, but even that is no guarantee. The creatures have learned to avoid the light, hiding in the dark recesses under the floorboards during the day, waiting for the shadows to grow long enough to merge with their own bodies. They have become the ghosts of the coastline, a reminder that evolution doesn't always happen in the way we expect, and that the ocean's most dangerous inhabitants might not stay in the water forever. Every morning, the tide goes out, and the beaches look pristine. The sand is white, the water is turquoise, and the islands look like paradise. But if you look closely at the porch of that abandoned villa, you might notice that the wood looks a little too clean, as if it has been scrubbed by 1,000 tiny mouths. You might see a single purple spine wedged in a crack between the boards. And you might realize that the carpet in your hotel room doesn't quite match the one in the brochure. The threat is spreading. Reports are coming in from further inland. Resorts miles away from the beach are finding these shadows in their laundry rooms and kitchens. The humidity of the monsoon season allows them to travel further and stay active longer. They are no longer just a coastal anomaly, they are an encroaching reality. The boundaries between the terrestrial and the marine are dissolving, and we are the ones caught in the middle, standing on a floor that might decide to move at any moment. If you find yourself on a tropical getaway this year, pay attention to the textures under your feet. Don't trust the shadows that seem a little too thick or the rugs that seem to shimmer in the corner of your eye. The shadow. Carpets are patient. They don't need to chase you. They only need you to take one step, to feel the soft give of the floor, and to wonder for one final terrifying second why your legs can no longer support the weight of your fear. The mystery of the structural softening compound remains unsolved because the samples are nearly impossible to collect. As soon as a land-based crown-of-thorns is removed from its colony, it self-destructs, dissolving into a puddle of caustic enzymes. It is as if they are part of a single, unified entity that refuses to be studied in pieces. They are a collective shadow, a living landscape that has reclaimed the land by turning its visitors into the very thing they fear most, a part of the floor. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, listen to the sounds of your house. Distinguish the settling of the wood from the soft, rhythmic clicking of spines. Look at the shadows in the corner and ask yourself if they were there when you entered the room. The shadow. Carpets are moving, sliding across the islands of the east, waiting for the next footfall to land on their venomous embrace. The paradise you see on the postcard is only a thin veneer, and beneath it, the thorns are waiting to turn your world into a liquid nightmare. In the remote villages of the Sunda Strait, a new kind of architecture is beginning to emerge. Houses are being built on high concrete pillars, the surfaces polished to a mirror shine to prevent any grip. But even these measures seem temporary. Observers have noted the starfish stacking themselves, one on top of the other, forming living ladders to reach the elevated platforms. It is a slow, methodical climb that can take hours, but they have nothing if not time. They move with the patience of the tide, rising inch by inch until they spill over the thresholds. In these villages, the night is spent in total silence, not out of peace, but out of necessity. Vibrations on a wooden floor are like a dinner bell to a neural network that spans the entire foundation of a building. The locals sleep in hammocks suspended from the ceiling, never letting a limb dangle too close to the ground. They have seen what happens when the floor begins to breathe. The ecological impact is staggering. As these shadow carpets move through the jungle floor, the traditional predators, the snakes, the monitor lizards, the large cats, are vanishing. They are being replaced by a singular carpeted void that leaves no tracks and no remains. This isn't just a change in the food chain, it's a replacement of the environment itself. Where there was once a forest floor of leaves and soil, there is now a pulsating mat of purple and black. The very ground has become predatory. This biological takeover suggests that the crown-of-thorns has found a way to bypass the limitations of its aquatic ancestors. They no longer need the reef to survive. They have turned the entire island into their reef. There is a chilling theory among the few researchers who have survived an encounter. The starfish are not just hunting for food, but for carbon. By breaking down the skeletal structures of land-dwelling creatures, they are harvesting the minerals needed to harden their own spines for a permanent life on land. Every person who disappears, every animal that is enveloped, contributes to the expansion of the colony. The shadow carpet isn't just a group of animals. It's a growing, living fortress. When you look at the beautiful, dark patterned rugs in the local markets, you find yourself checking the edges, looking for the telltale shimmer of a spine. You find yourself walking on your toes, terrified of the moment the ground might yield. The evolution of the crown-of-thorns is a silent revolution, a shift in the balance of power that we are only beginning to comprehend. We have spent centuries looking at the sea as a separate world, a place of beauty and danger that stays behind the shoreline. But the shoreline is moving. The sea is walking. And the next time you feel the ground soften beneath your feet, you will know that the shadow has finally caught up to you. Keep the lights on. Keep your boots laced tight. And never trust a carpet that breathes in the dark.